Hello boys and girls, and welcome to Mrs. Bandu's Math Movies. This is lesson 1-7 for course 2, period 4. We are going to look at adding and subtracting integers. So our objectives are to add and subtract integers and to solve problems involving integers. Okay, so our key concepts when we start out are to review our rules. Okay, when we are adding integers, if we have the same sign, the sum of two positive numbers is positive. The sum of two negative numbers is negative. So when you're adding two numbers that have the same sign, their sum is going to have that sign as well. So for example, 3 plus 5 is 8. Negative 3 plus 5 is negative 8. Okay, that part is pretty straightforward. Different signs are a little more involved. Find the absolute value of each integer. Remember, absolute value is how far that number is away from 0 on the number line. Subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater absolute value. Yes, and we are saying subtract here, even though it is an addition problem. The sum has the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. Okay, so for example, if I look here, I have negative 3 plus 5. So the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. The absolute value of 5 is 5. So I'm going the problem I actually have to work out is 5 minus 3. And 5 minus 3 is 2. So I put down the 2 in my answer. I leave the answer as positive because 5 had the greater absolute value and it is positive. When I look at this example, it's slightly different. 3 plus negative 5. Absolute values are the same. So the absolute value of negative 5 is 5, and it's greater than the absolute value of 3, which is 3. So again, I get 5 minus 3 is 2, but my answer in fact is negative 2 because negative 5 had the greater absolute value, and it's going to give its sign to the answer. Okay, this is just talking through the rules, going through the mechanics. We will also be looking at doing this on a number line in class and actually a little bit later in our notes as well. And we will probably also be looking at doing this with manipulatives as well, so we can get a firm grasp of what we're trying to do. Right now, we just want to have our rules in front of us, so as we work with them, we can refer back to them and repeat them as we apply them. Okay. Moving on to subtracting integers. To subtract an integer, we add its opposite. Okay, so remember, opposites might be negative 3 and positive 3, positive 11 and negative 11, and so on. Opposites are the same distance from 0, but in different directions. Okay, so if I start out with 3 minus 5, I'm going to add, so minus is going to become plus. The opposite of 5, the opposite of 5 is negative 5. Okay, now what I basically have is an addition problem, and I need to go back and use my rules for adding. Okay, I have a positive and a negative, so I take their absolute values, so that's going to be 5 minus 3, because I'm going to subtract absolute values, which gives me the number 2. Remember here, negative 5 has the greater absolute value, so in addition, it gives its sign to the answer. So 3 plus negative 5 is equal to negative 2. 3 minus 5 is equal to negative 2. Okay, this and this mean the very same thing. As I said, we will be looking at these with number lines, so don't panic if it's not making perfect sense at the moment. Negative 3 minus 5, I need to add the opposite of 5, so that becomes negative 3 plus negative 5. They're both negative, so I can simply add their absolute values. 3 plus 5 is 8, and it gives me the negative sign because they're both negative. And finally, we do have a new definition here for a new term, additive inverses. two numbers are additive inverses if their sum is 0. Excuse me. Okay, so for example, 5 plus -5 equals 0. So 5 and -5 are additive inverses. You might also be thinking, hey, they're opposites. Well, yes, they are. So opposites are additive inverses as well. Excuse me, I had a scratchy throat there. Needed to take a sip of water. Okay. Adding integers with a number line. So here's, as promised, here's where we're going to look at a number line. Again, we will look at other ways in school together as well. So here we want to find the sum of -4 plus -2. So basically, we start at 0 and move 4 units left because negative is to the left. So here is 0. And we go here and we end up at -4. From that point, we move another 2 units to the left. So from here, we see that we end up at -6. Okay? Applying the rule that we learned up here, we are adding 2 negatives, so 4 plus 2 is 6. Since they're both negative, my sum remains negative, and I get -6. Here is the number line. When you do the quick checks, as you always have to do for these, here is a number line written for you. You may use this one. You may find it convenient to draw your own number line. Whichever works for you is fine with me. But please be sure that before you come to class, you do answer this quick check question. I am going on to the next page, so either pause and work that one now or come back to it later. Okay, now here we are looking at adding integers. And here we are not going to be using the number line, or it's not drawn for us. Certainly if you want to use it, you may draw your own. Okay, we are doing 24 plus -6. So since we have opposite signs, I am going to find the absolute value of each integer. So the absolute value of 24 is 24, and the absolute value of -6 is 6. So I'm going to subtract 6 from 24 because its absolute value is less than the absolute value of 24. So 24 minus 6 is 18. Okay, so that tells me then that doing my rule for subtraction, that now becomes 24 plus -6. So that gives me 18, and the sign is negative. I'm sorry, I misspoke. The sign on this one is positive. I am so sorry. I'm not sure what I was thinking there. Not paying attention. The sum has the same sign as 24 because 24 has the larger absolute value. Be sure you went back and changed that because I wrote down the negative sign to begin with. That's going to happen sometimes, and my goodness, if I ever make a mistake, please be sure to point it out in class if I haven't caught it on the video. Okay. All right, subtracting integers. We want to find -7 minus 2. Okay, and we're going to look at our number line. So we're going to start at 0 and move 7 units left. So here we go, 0, 7 to the left, goes along here, and I'm right there at -7. Then I'm going to go left the opposite of 2, or move the opposite of 2, which is -2. So I'm going 2 more units to the left. Maybe I should say move left over here. Okay. So we see that I should end up at -9. All right, so I start out with -7 minus 2. And I need to rewrite it as an addition problem because that's what the rules tell me to do. That becomes -7 plus -2. Both are now negative, so I can simply add their absolute values. 7 plus 2 is 9. Since both are negative, the sum is -9. Okay. Let's look at an application of perhaps using positives and negatives or integers. Recorded temperatures at Amundsen Scott Station in Antarctica have ranged from a low of negative 89 degrees Fahrenheit to a high of negative 13 degrees Fahrenheit. Find the difference in the temperatures. If we want to find the difference, remember that is a subtraction problem. And remember, we're going to say the warmest temperature or the highest temperature of negative 13 minus the lowest temperature of negative 89. So negative 13 minus negative 89 becomes, add the opposite of negative 89, which is 89. So it becomes negative 13 plus positive 89. We simplify, and to do this we have a negative plus a positive, so we need to subtract those absolute values. So even though this number came second, and even though this says plus, because we have different signs, it's the larger absolute value minus the smaller one. So 9 minus 3 is 6, 8 minus 1 is 7. So that gives me 76 for my answer. My answer is going to remain positive because 89 has the larger absolute value, and it is positive to begin with, so my sum or the difference is going to be positive. So the difference in temperature is 76 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? And we do want to label that because the 76 isn't just a random number, it's actually talking about degrees Fahrenheit. So we want to include that label. Okay, now I would like you at this point to complete all the quick check questions. If you haven't done one, go back to that. You have 4 of them all together. A couple of them have several parts. Use a number line if helpful. Try to use the rules as well. I will see you in class. Thank you.